Alright, today we're going to wire up our wideband air fuel controller to our Hondata Kpro, and this one is version 4. Let's get started. Here's what the wideband air fuel gauge looks like, and the part number is going to be 30-0300. First, we're going to start off by taking off the passenger side cover under the glove box, which is right here. There's 3 plastic clips, one here, one here, one here. We're gonna take those off to get access to the ECU. Okay, we got the cover back on the ECU, and now we're gonna go back up to where our gauges are at, pull those out, and get access to this gauge here, the harness for that, and then I'll show you the wire colors that gotta run, the one wire that runs from here to the pigtail, and we're gonna use, and that's gonna be the red wire. Okay, as you can see, we have our gauges pulled out. I have them labeled. So this one here, it's gonna be air fuel right there. So it's this one. And it's going to be the harness that plugs into the top of the gauge. We follow down, goes through this bundle of wire here, and I just wired this all up recently, so I'm familiar with the wires here. So yeah, this is a big thick bundle. All these other wires are just the power wires for the other gauges. So it's this thick bundle with all these different colors on it: blue, white, brown, green, black, and then white with the black stripe. So we're gonna go to our instruction manual for the gauge, which is right here. Gonna open it up, and you can see a picture of the plug. The top plug here is the one we're gonna be looking at. Here's the pin location, and then the diagram. And we're gonna be using the white wire here, and that is your positive output. So you're gonna use the white wire, and then I also have white wire, and I'm gonna run this through the dash and hook it up to our red wire here on our ribbon cable for the analog inputs. Okay, we have our wire hooked up, the harness that comes from the gauge, to right here where I have everything spliced together. So it's going to be, like I said, the white wire from this harness, and then I also have white wire that I ran through the dash. So I have that hooked up here to the white wire, runs through the dash, down through here, comes out right here, and then I have it connected to the red wire of the analog inputs. So the next step here is to get it set up using the Hondata software. I'll have to pull up my laptop, pull that all up, open up the menu where you go to set up the analog inputs. So we'll go ahead and do that next. Alright guys, this is an important step that I wanted to show you. So I had showed you previously that you need to connect the white wire off of your air fuel ratio gauge, the harness. It's going to be the top harness that comes out of the back of it, and they give you all these wires like I discussed earlier. But there is an important step. So you need to connect the white wire, which is a positive output, and there's also going to be a brown wire right here, the one I have in my hand, and you need to connect that as well to the ECU. That is going to be a negative output that also needs to get hooked up to the ECU, and it needs to go to one of the black wires. There's going to be 2 on this harness here that comes out of the Hondata right here that I have in my hand. So one of those 2 black wires, just pick one, and that will go to from the brown wire to the ECU, the black wire. Reason being when you go to start the car up, which I'll show you, you're gonna get a reading on the gauge, and then using the Hondata software for AFR, you're gonna get another reading. And the issue is you're not gonna have the same reading between the gauge and the Hondata software. That's because of that ground, or not ground, but that negative output from your gauge, which is the brown wire, needs to get hooked up to one of the black wires, the harness that comes out right here of your Hondata ECU. And once you do that, both wires, or once they both get hooked up, it will allow it to get the proper signal, and you'll get the same reading on the gauge as you do on your Hondata. So the gauge is going to be what you're going to have your baseline off of, because you're basically taking the output of what this gauge is reading to the input of the ECU. And so if it doesn't have the same reading, then there's a discrepancy somewhere between like the ground on the actual harness for the gauges, or it could be not a proper 12 volts. So it could be a bunch of different issues, but the simplest issue here, when everything is hooked correctly, you don't want to miss hooking up the brown wire to the ECU. That will cause an error in the readings, and they won't be the same. So we'll go ahead and start it up, and then I'll show you what happens when you don't have the brown wire connected. Okay, you're gonna let the O2 sensor heat up. Okay, and we're gonna go ahead and start it. Okay, so now it's reading 8.5, right around there. And then on the Hondata, it's not reading anything yet. You have to hit record, and so now the numbers are all over the place. They're not steady. That's how you know you have an issue. It should be reading just like the gauge. It should be pretty close into the range. Get the glare there. So here's the air fuel gauge. So like 9.3 now. And now it's not, it should be 9.3 as well. So we'll go ahead and hook up the brown wire, and then I'll show you what happens after you do that. Okay, now we have the brown wire hooked up to the black wire on the ECU. I just used green for ground. Use any color you want. And now you can see that the gauge is 10.2, 10.3, and also the Honda is reading 10.2, 10.3 AFR. So everything is synced. There'll be a small delay in the readings, but the most accurate will be the actual gauge, because it's got to input it to the ECU, so there'll be a small delay. But other than that, that's it. Alright, so the GoPro overheated, and I'm going to show you one last step that I missed. So we're going to go ahead and turn ignition on, and I'm just using my phone for this. Okay, so when you go to download from the ECU to get your tune onto your computer, okay, so it's under datalog, download from ECU. It'll pull up another box, and in that box you want to go to calibration storage, retrieve calibration. So now it's going to pull the tuned from the ECU. Okay. And then you're just gonna come over here, click this box off, and then you would go to options, settings, and then click on wideband input. So this window comes up. Then you would hit and select use analog input 0, because that's the input I'm using, which is the red wire. Not using, and then it brings up this table here. You just click OK, and then after that I go to parameters. Okay, now there won't be anything populated here when you first come into this, but you can see analog 0 is your AEM Wideband O2 input. So how you get that? Come to here, input is 0, which is the red wire. That's one I chose to use because I don't have anything else hooked up to the ECU. Next, you're gonna have to name it. I have mine named AEM Wideband O2, and then you have to come to this next one, conversion, and you have to pull up the model number to the gauge that you're using. There's a couple different gauges. So I have 30-0300 selected. That's the gauge I'm using. Make sure if you want it reading, you want air fuel, voltage offset, you want 0, smoothing, none. Okay. Once you're done with that, you're going to want to upload it to the ECU. So just hit, so from here you're going to upload it, and then you're going to select this arrow and upload it to the ECU, and activate all the analog